Hi, I'm Jo Clark, and thanks so much for joining me today. This is the Redefining Midlife podcast, a podcast designed for the 40-plus woman who is determined to challenge society's myths and beliefs around midlife. It's for the woman who is inspired and ready to define midlife her way. Join me each week as I chat to health and wellness experts for up-to-date information on how to live well as some special conversations with incredible everyday women redefining what midlife can look like. Here's to making our next half of life even better than the first. Today's guest on the podcast is Alex Robinson. Alex is a nutritionist and yoga instructor and has created her own health and wellness business to support her clients who are going through perimenopause and beyond. Teaming up with Alex was an absolute no-brainer because these are all areas that I'm passionate about as well. We both believe that it's vital that all women get the message that perimenopause and those first few years after menopause in particular are critical windows of health. Because the food we eat, the way we move, the way we support our body is incredibly important, and it sets a scene for how well we age in the future. In our conversation today, we chat about how and why she created her business to support midlife women, as well as her own experiences of entering menopause at a younger age. We also discuss menopause in the workplace and the important work she is doing in this space. Welcome to Redefining Midlife, Alex, and it's so lovely to have you here. I'm looking forward to our chat because you and I have got a few things that are in common. So to have a discussion about this is going to be really good for me because there's a lot I still don't know about you and a lot I'd like to learn. So basically, you've created a business that focuses on women's wellness. Can you tell me what's been the driving force behind that and what's caused you to go in that direction?
Thanks, Jo. It's been a bit of an evolution really because it wasn't necessarily targeted at women's wellness, but as I've made my way through the hormonal transition of my 40s, I've realised how important it is to take care of ourselves at this time. So initially I was really focused on nutrition, but as time went by, I realised how important all these other factors were in our overall wellness. And it's our overall wellness that's really going to determine how we come out the other side of menopause.
And did you find for yourself that that was something that there might have been an area that you needed more support in, or was that something that you sailed through reasonably well but realised it could be a problem for other women?
Yeah, I think that was a big trigger for me, actually, and one of the reasons why I really wanted to educate myself more and be able to help women, because I was quite young. I was in full menopause at 45, and no one was really talking about it. The doctors were sort of sending me off to endocrinologists, and I wasn't really getting answers or definitive answers to help me, and I just felt so isolated and alone, someone in their mid-40s, not knowing which way to go and not really having any friends, although I have lots of diverse age groups of friends. It just wasn't something that was discussed. So I really had to rely on my own education and the beautiful help of my naturopath to really guide me through. And I realised how in depth that was just for me, and I was in the industry. So what's it like for women who've got no idea and they just bump into it in the night. So I felt scared and afraid. So I don't want other women to have that experience if possible.
Yeah, it is so interesting. That's what got me onto why I'm doing what I'm doing as well, and working with women and trying to help them through this transition period. I mean, you started young, and I'm 10 years older, and I'm still going through my transition. So it can be so different for women, and for something that all women go through, the lack of understanding for what our body is going through is immense. And that's all the way through from, as you said, your doctor and to a lot of other practitioners. People don't know about it. And as women, we're probably not talking about our experiences nearly enough to help others. So it's wonderful what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's the old scenario, though, you don't often take action on something until you've hit something pretty serious, and we can start talking about it. And even I think women in their late 30s need to start knowing about it, just adopting some lifestyle practices particularly. But until shit starts hitting bad, there's not really much of a motivation. But I think the tide is changing, and probably with COVID too, just our general level of wellness. People are a little bit more invested in upgrading their general health, I think.
Yes, absolutely. No, that I agree with a lot of what you were saying. And I might be a bit like you I'm a dog with a bone. When I find something, I want to learn more and more about it, particularly when it's affecting me and it's affecting my friends and other women who I've, haven't had the pleasure of meeting. But I know that it's a space that with some effort, other people can help to fill. So, between you and I and a
Yes.
lot of the other women who are now starting to talk about it and helping other women, I think what we're all doing is important work. So you have been a nutritionist. That's one of the areas that you also work in. So can you tell us some of the bigger do's and do less ofs rather than don'ts, but the do less ofs for women as they reach midlife? Is there something in particular that women need to be more mindful of?
Yeah. There's lots of things you can do, but one of the things that I've really noticed in the world of social media is we have so much information, and how confusing and frustrating is that sometimes. And it just you don't know which direction to go. One minute you're reading something and the next another. So I've really pulled back from going down all those rabbit holes and trying to solve problems. So in that regard, less is more. Getting a couple of really high level quality people that you follow and believe in. Hopefully one of those might be your primary health carer, not necessarily a GP, but in my instance, like a naturopath. And sticking to that, really honing in on that. And the big one I've really found is just taking the reins on your own health, not outsourcing. Obviously, you need help and testing, and you need to be looking after yourself, but really taking accountability and responsibility for your own health. And that might just be as simply as starting with knowing blood work that is important for you. What are your triggers and your family history, and keeping on top of that and knowing those numbers. And you have to know so much about background about what they mean, but what's the healthy ranges and what you can do to influence them. That goes for food too. The less is more idea. Just keep things simple. Really, we just need to eat whole foods, and there is so much wonderful food available to us, particularly in Australia. So that's not hard. It's just being sensible, and that's probably a lot less of the things that we probably would like to put in our body, particularly when it comes to alcohol. And I've really had to work at that now that I'm on hormone therapy myself. It's not a really good combination, mixing alcohol with hormone therapy, but then just in general for women in this age bracket because of the connection to cancer, particularly breast cancer.
Yes.
And, I've got this, you've probably heard it too, moving from FOMO to JOMO. So don't worry about everyone's parties and social lives and staying out late and all of that. Take joy in the new life that's unfolding, because it is changing, and it's going to change every woman that goes through this stage. And find the joy in having the opportunity to reset, find a new way forward, and you can leave the old life behind for others. Because it serves us much better, I think, when we're again running our own show the way we want it to look like.
Yeah, that's a really lovely way of looking at this whole transition time, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, and we have to find the positives in these situations, because there's a lot that is scary and daunting. So having control over those things is, to some degree, helps.
As women too, we've got to be more mindful of how our body feels with certain things, like how our body feels when we eat certain, and be aware, because I think so many times we're rushing from one thing to the next that we don't slow down enough to go, oh, that's making me feel really bloated, or I feel fairly uncomfortable when I eat that, or it gives me a pain in the stomach, or I don't really enjoy that anymore. What should I be doing? So, and that's the same with, I suppose, movement as well. And I'll move into that very shortly with you, because that's another area that you also offer. But how your body reacts with different movement forms. For some women, doing a lot of their high intensity things anymore, it really doesn't serve us. and
That's right.
you don't feel as good. And I certainly know that with a lot of the exercise that I do now, it's really I love walking and taking in what's around me, and I love to do yoga, and I really am mindful of being strong and flexible and have good sense of balance as I'm getting older, and I know the importance of that. So I think also being aware of how your body feels when you're doing certain things. So thinking about the whole movement area as such, you are also a yoga teacher. And yoga is something that you read a lot about the benefits, but particularly for women in midlife, what are some of the benefits that you found? Because that's the main demographic that you actually work with with your yoga studio.
Yes, that's right. And I did come to yoga because I needed some help with managing my stress and mood, and just at the stage of life, not knowing that I was in perimenopause at that time. So what a gift it was when I realized that was what was going on. And this wonderful thing that I found was really helping me. And I think I really noticed it because the way I would think about things, and not everything was not a problem anymore. There was a solution, and probably giving unwanted advice, but you get very philosophical, and all those little things that you are on the yoga mat being taught in class, you share with the world once you leave the room. And that's a lovely gift. But one of the key things that I've really noticed is how yoga, and particularly yin yoga, which I love teaching and doing, it really talks to the nervous system. And at this stage of life, through this hormone transition, our nervous system is going through, well, my brother once told me I was going through a tornado, which I was cranky with him about, but actually it is a perfect description.
A great metaphor, isn't it?
Yeah. Of what's going on. The nervous system is in a tornado flux.
Yes.
And so if we can help it to calm down, switching from sympathetic back to parasympathetic, then that's a bonus. That's working in our favor for our hormones being released, how our food's digested, how we respond to stress, so many things. So being able to have a little bit more control over our nervous system is key. It's also lubricating the joints gently. Well, there is hot yoga and many different types of yoga, but I think by the time moving into the stage, you're looking to do more gentle forms of yoga and restorative. So it's a lot of benefit to the joints by doing yoga. And it's also giving us an opportunity to connect to our feminine side. Yin is all about the feminine connection. When our life is so full of yang and busyness and masculine workplaces, that's been our life pretty much. So it's the time to reconnect to those lovely ideas about self-compassion and kindness and gentleness. And I don't think many of us have been taught to show that to ourselves.
That's right. And that's what yin yoga you found has been a benefit for women who are attending your classes. So just maybe highlighting a little bit more for those who don't know, just explain how yin is different to the other forms. You mentioned hot yoga before, and some people might think there's only one form and they've got to turn themselves into a pretzel. And for a lot of women, that's daunting because they may not have moved their body in this way for a long time. So just explain yin yoga a little bit more to us.
Yes, that's a really good point. We see all these amazing bodies in Lycra, and that's a turn off. And I did used to seek out the hot yoga, but now I just love gentle yoga, some more slow moving yoga, and yin being all about being in a pose for 5 to 10 minutes maybe. And the lovely thing is that there's no rules. So the pose molds for your body on the particular day, and you've got lots of props to help you. And sometimes your body's not working how you'd like it to. So you just work with what you've got at the time. And being in the pose for a long time allows the body just to move into this space of stillness and quietness and gentleness. And you have to go into your mind and your body. And this is where all those, the calmness and the self-compassion come from? Because how we speak to our body, our cells and our mind take all that on, and that's very important. So yeah, you're really holding the poses, and then going one step further from yin is restorative yoga, and that's just about complete relaxation. There's no effort at all, and most people fall asleep in class, which is lovely. Whereas yin, there is a little bit, we're trying to work with the fascia and connective tissue to help stretch that out. It's like fine spider's web fascia, which connects the joints and the bones and the muscles. And if we stop moving, then that spider's web sort of becomes tight and restrictive, which is why we feel stiff when we get older.
Yes.
So doing yin regularly allows that gentle opening and expansion and moving. And we're not trying to really get the muscles going so much and build up a sweat. We're trying to stay nice and calm. So yeah, that I would say 80% are women that come to my class, but I do have blokes that come too. It's equally beneficial to them. But at this stage of life, going through the hormonal transition, we need to do everything we can. And I think yin is wonderful.
Well, that's a great alternative for a lot of women who might be more afraid of not being able to put themselves in poses and feeling like they're so different to everybody else in a class, and to have props and things to help them as well. It was interesting. I had a beautiful time on the weekend with a restorative yoga with a Reiki combined, a session, and it was just divine. It was a lovely way just to calm myself down after a fairly busy week. So well done for offering this to women. So anyone out there who is listening who is maybe thinking about yoga and they're a bit put off with the fact that in your mind there's only one form of yoga, this is a great alternative that Alex offers and other yoga teachers. Most studios, Alex, would you say would offer yin as one of the forms in their program?
Yes, I think more and more.
Excellent.
Well, realize the benefits.
That's something that other women might be able to have a look at if they're looking for something in particular, another form of exercise. So other sorts of lifestyle modifications that you can think of or recommend, because that is really the key to living optimally now and into the future. So what other things might you recommend for women who are in their midlife?
Well, Jo, it's great that you asked that question, because lifestyle modification, I feel like, is just the most powerful way we can support ourselves and make quite significant changes for ourselves. And during lockdown, I wrote a program designed purely around this, because I saw that really people have no information about how they can help themselves. And on a day-to-day basis, that's really important that we have tools and tricks and strategies to be able to help ourselves through this without having to resort to pills and doctors and everything else. The body knows what to do. We can guide it. So with that in mind, I call this program the Holistic Impact, because it's 8 different key areas that I think. So the first one that I think is most important is sleep. So most people probably aren't having a healthy sleep routine. And that really comes down to the wind down at night before bed and what's going on in those few hours before bed, and then the environment in the bedroom, and then what happens in the morning. And there's actually quite a bit to it if you really start to investigate, but I think that that's really important. And that has such a big impact on our hormones. It's a time when our brain gets a rinse out, fluids moving around the brain and down the spine and cleaning things out. It's resetting, recalibrating for the next day. So if you're not getting that quality sleep, then it's no wonder that you're going to wake up feeling tired and not being able to function optimally. And then moving on from there, stress management. And we know how much stress plays a role now in our lives. It's been a very trying few years for everyone, and we've really had to get on top of our stress. So that's about finding things that particularly bring you joy and calmness, help reduce anxiety. And it also contributes to our overall health and well-being. If we don't manage our stress, then we tend to can put on weight easily, then we're not sleeping well. So our cardiovascular system's at risk. So it's sort of a cycle. And it just comes back to those key things. So getting on top of that, stress management will then lead into all those other benefits. We touched on exercise and movement, and that does need to change as we get older because our body's not going to respond to that high intensity exercise that we used to do in our 20s and 30s. And if we continue to push our body, it's going to physically break down, but also metabolically, because those hormones are being driven, those stress hormones are being driven, and high cortisol, high insulin. It's a bit of a storm for metabolic disease or metabolic conditions that we don't want. So finding things that just suit us and make us happy, not what others are doing, I think is really important.
Finding something you can enjoy too. Like that's the key, because otherwise you're not going to want to continue on with it. If it's seen as a chore, it's something you don't enjoy. And I think now we've gone through at this stage of our life, it really is finding something that is going to be more joyful and something that's going to be wanting to continue with.
Yeah, finding those things that you've always put off or just thought, oh, I can't do that, and just thinking, I'm going to give it a go.
Yep,
which I've done.
Yep, turning on the radio and having a dance to something you enjoy, yes. Favourite playlist. I mean, that's just a way of moving your body. It doesn't matter if do it in a room or do it when no one's around, but it's just moving, isn't it?
Yeah. But on the flip side of that too, it is nice to maybe do things in groups and connecting with people again.
Absolutely, yes.
We do probably spend more time at home these days, so it's nice to find a place to connect. And then are you living a life mindfully, or is your mind just too full with stuff? And thinking about how we eat, our nutrition, are you eating with devices around you and, not sitting at the dinner table and not discussing the day with your family? Are you taking the time to be mindful about that? And that can also then bleed into the rest of your life. And it's starting to ask those questions. Are you aware of how your day rolls, or are you so absorbed in jumping from one thing to the other? So I think that's a really interesting exploration going through that. And, it can affect your digestion, how your tummy feels at the end of the evening, whether or not you've eaten it mindfully or not.
Yes.
And then that's going to affect how you sleep. So they will fall into one of each other. And then screens and blue light, I think that's a really interesting thing, because we live so much of our life in front of a screen now, and there is a place for it, but again, it's all about the timing. So I want to try and reduce that blue light towards the end of the day. And there's lots of devices we can use now with gritty glasses and screen protectors and getting red light bulbs, things like that, just to reduce that blue light hitting your eye at the end of the day. And that's stimulating then hormones that you don't want stimulated late at night.
That's right, when you're wanting to get to sleep.
Yep. I know there's a few here, we're almost done. The next one is cleaning out your life. And by that I mean cleaning out anything that doesn't serve you anymore, be that beliefs, perceptions, attitudes, friendships, marriages, clothes, half the kitchen that you don't use anymore. I'm finding that myself. And, that is so cleansing and cathartic to do these things, because we get to this stage and we don't need all this stuff anymore.
Yes.
But often we've been brought up to be yes people. We say yes, we want to be compliant and well behaved and put people off and be easygoing, to our own detriment, I think. So yes, sometimes we need to address relationships in our life that don't suit us and clean them out.
Yeah. So you went through your menopause, actual menopause, at the age of 45. So you were transitioning for a few years prior to that. So that's quite a bit younger than the average age of a woman's once they reach menopause, and which is 51. What were some of the symptoms that you had, and did you use what you were just talking about to help you through that time? Are they the sorts of things that you were looking at to support yourself through those years?
Yeah, I would say now that I look back that my mood was certainly lower more often. You know, I don't think I was depressed, but I just didn't feel happy like I usually did. And I felt like I was holding a lot of fluid in my body. Just everything felt big and tight and uncomfortable, and certainly felt like I had that midsection muffin top happening a bit. And certainly a decrease in libido that just sort of slowly crept on. And it wasn't until I really started putting all the pieces together that I thought, oh, okay, here we go. And then the hot flushes started, and I went, okay, right, that's the game that we're playing now.
Yeah.
So I didn't really try and remedy too much of this on my own, because I had been working with my naturopath probably since 40, and I consider her my doctor, my main port of call. So we've done lots of testing over that time. So I was quite aware of certain things that I have problems with and that I need to keep an eye on. But then we also started really honing in on the diet. So cut out meat, and that's, you know, sad because I do love meat, but saturated fat isn't my friend.
Yeah.
Yet, you know, for other women, that's not a problem. So, but it's really important to find those things out about yourself, because, you know, they're going to be the longevity things that will help see you through.
Yes.
And doing testing that's relevant to you, you know, getting on top of that metabolic health stuff has been really important. So knowing about your blood sugars, knowing about your cholesterol levels, your heart health, BMI, and not that the BMI is the be all and end all, but it's giving you a bit of a range about where you're traveling. And I think we're just being educated, self-educated, and reading good sources of information, though, and following people that really know what they're talking about. It doesn't have to be a lot, but yeah. And of course, you know, using food as medicine, that's just been amazing. So just focusing on whole foods, organic foods when I can. I know that it's expensive, but by eating that way, we're avoiding a whole lot of toxins and chemicals in our body that are already inundated with these things. So if you can't afford organic, there's always great ways of washing fruit and veg. So there are ways we can do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I also know about you, Alex, is that you're starting to get into the area of work with menopause in the actual workplace. So that's an area that you've started to pick up more on, because this really hasn't been an area that a lot of workplaces have even focused on yet. The large majority of the workforce are women, and there are a lot of women who are in this age group that are going through transition and into menopause, and they're suffering with lots of different symptoms, yet workplaces aren't aware or sympathetic to what they may be. So what sort of things are you doing in that area?
Yeah, it's just a newly emerging area that I'm sort of slowly trying to break into here. And I guess I've come from a place of, we're talking about wellness and nutrition in the workspace, because, you know, we want to retain healthy, happy staff and decrease days off sick leave. I'm talking from that point of view, and then sort of leading into, and then we've got to address also this space for women in the workforce. We want to retain them also. And how are we doing that? How are we going with supporting women who need help, and just finding gentle approaches to bring this up and support women. And that's maybe through making it aware that menopause isn't just a woman's problem. It's a society's problem. It affects men, it affects husbands, it affects your colleagues. So it's a worthwhile discussion having in an open forum, I think, where women can start to put forward some concerns about the current situation, but then how they could be resolved also, because we, if nothing else, we're really good at coming up with solutions and being able to make change and be inclusive. I mean, women are really good at doing those things. So I think it's about encouraging a conversation, flagging, you know, if I'm in a meeting and I feel like I have a hot flush, I don't know what to do about that. And, you know, it affects my ability to be able to answer a question or contribute to the meeting. And so being able to vent that firstly to someone like a manager or someone in authority, that's really important to create that feeling of safety and open here.
Because it's a shame that's seen as almost I'm embarrassed or it's a shameful thing, but it's a completely natural part of all women's lives. Not all women will go through symptoms such as that, but for some women who do, that is a lot to take on. Like as you were saying, using that as an example, you know, a hot flush is happening when you're in a meeting, or when you're doing something that's important, and you're so worried about that and what the effects of that is, and will other people notice, that you can't focus on what you need to do as much as you should be able to. Yeah, so that
just creates anxiety, and then you're not contributing, and then, it's a horrible thing. So really, it's just about a lot of workplaces in other parts of the world, in England and Europe particularly, they're designing policies, menopause policies, so that women can, and maybe that is just working from home. We know that works now. So on the days where she's not feeling well, she can just say, I'm not feeling well, I'm going to work from home though, and I'll be checking in for that meeting. But, you know, I think it's a wonderful opportunity for workplaces to bring back that amazing skill and talent that's been lost because of droves of women leaving. And I think once women are empowered and know how to look after themselves, then they're more confident and likely to come back to work. So it is a two-way stream. We need to know what to do for ourselves, or have better understanding, but also for workplaces to be flexible and encouraging and start these conversations.
And good, all the best for this, and good luck with it, because it's such an important thing that we need to start the conversation with. How far you get with different organizations, they're all going to be different, but it's great that these conversations are going to be happening. It's long overdue, and for women now of our age, it is we're lucky because it is starting to be spoken about. For women ahead of us, they went through a lot without having any of these open discussions that we're having now. Alex, I'm just going to ask you a few questions before we wrap up, and they're almost like little quick fire questions. I just want to know, what's been the biggest positive you've felt since you've entered midlife?
I'm going to say not giving a crap what other people think anymore. I love it.
Isn't it liberating? There are so many women who will say exactly the same thing. Yes. How old were you when you started feeling that?
I would say, probably 3 years ago, I really started to feel it, and it was almost like I felt like a bit of a rebel. I felt naughty, but it's just that for so long you're on this cycle of and you're just completely changing. So why not? I think it's really fun.
Good. I'm with you, and I think any other woman listening would be feeling the same as well. So,
and can I add to that, Jo? I'm just going to say, I may have said it to you previously, but taking my bra off at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Is that what I can see in the background over there?
I know, sometimes I do forget to put them away.
Your husband will walk through the door rubbing his hands with glee, no doubt, some days. If you could give the 40-plus woman one piece of life advice, Alex, what would that be?
I think that would be, get interested in you, as in start collecting and knowing all about you and how your body works. Start making records and keeping a file on yourself, because it's going to be really helpful down the track.
That's
and in probably a really useful thing to do would be start using a period tracker, something online that you can start making notes on, because when you go further down the line and your doctor's asking questions, it's a great reference.
That is a great piece of advice, and I'm glad I did that. I started about 5 years ago, and to look back and to be able to have that and to see and I can tell now that I know so much about perimenopause, what stage I was in and how that is changing. So that is, that's a great piece of advice. Got another question for you. If you could look into the future, what do you hope 80-year-old Alex will say to current day Alex?
Oh, wow. You got to live an amazing second half of your life beyond your wildest dreams. Yeah. I mean, I've got all these ideas and things I want to do, and I just think, oh gosh, really? But I'm going to do it because all this time, like, I've had a great life and I don't regret anything, but I've held back because of things I've been worried, what people think, and now that I don't care, I'm just going to go for it.
Excellent. And the whole years of raising children is behind you. So have you got this time and this space to now focus on the things that you can give? Ah, good. I'm looking forward to 80-year-old Alex saying that. Now, how can women find you, first of all, and then get more information about all the things that you do? And we'll pop them in the show notes as well, but just let us know now.
Thanks, Jo. So my website is alexrobinsonwellness.com. So on there you can book a service with me if you'd like to. You can connect with me. That's also the portal where you can sign up for my Holistic Impact program if that's of interest to you. I'm also on socials, Instagram and Facebook as Alex Robinson Wellness, and I'm on LinkedIn as Alexandra Robinson. So, and I'm really excited about my LinkedIn page because I really want to start getting into that speaking and educating people about menopause in the workplace.
Yeah, well, all the very best with that. And thank you for your time today. I'm sure everybody has enjoyed listening to what you've had to say and your wisdom and your wise words and what you've discovered along your path as well. So thanks so much, Alex, for joining us.
Thank you so much, Jo. It's been a real pleasure talking to you about something I just am so passionate about.
Thanks so much for listening and sharing your time with me today. I'd love you to hit subscribe on Apple Podcast or your favorite podcast app to keep spreading these empowering messages. Please share this podcast with other incredible midlife women in your world. Join me again next week for another redefining midlife conversation. Thanks again for tuning in.